Hello, everybody. It's
Good
Tara.
evening.
Tara, Sozo Mountain Ministries. We got Dwaine Kills, and we have John Blankenship here. So excited for tonight. It's hard to call him John because he was always Coach B to me. These were my basketball coaches for high school. But welcome to Thursday Night Parenting 101. Something super cool happened. Their book just launched. It's called Becoming Intentional at Parenting, and it is talking about the heart of a mentoring parent for successfully raising kids. And I think Dwayne's clock decided to go off at the right time instead of the wrong time.
I know, right? How could that possibly be right now?
Is he done already?
Sorry about that. Luckily, it's not 14 o'clock.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, we're so glad that you've joined us tonight. Or if you're watching later, thank you for watching, for tuning in. You can catch past episodes of Thursdays with Dwaine on Facebook, YouTube, and yep, that's it. The Instagram ones, for some reason, don't stick, so I got to figure that out. If anybody watching knows, feel free to send me a message. I'd love to figure that out. But anyway, sozomountainministries.com. You can find all of our social media outlets and videos on there as well. So super exciting. The book just launched this week. Anybody who wants to, today and tomorrow only, can go and order the book completely free on Amazon. And I'm going to post a link in the comments right now so you guys can go just click on the link and get there. We would love it if you purchase the book for free. I say purchase. If you get the book, we'd love it if you'd leave, or they would love it if you leave a review. And I just want to read to you a couple of the reviews that they already have because it's so good. So one person, the subject said, feeling overwhelmed and alone as you navigate parenting during the teen years. As a mom of 5 currently in the trenches with kids age 13 to 25, this book was a much needed boost of equal parts encouragement, wisdom, and hope. The teen/young adult years are a very lonely season in the parenting world, with few voices able to give practical advice without greatly oversimplifying the challenges life throws at our kids during this time. The Heart of a Mentoring Parent addresses the serious issues parents must face in our current culture and equips you to go beyond simply policing your teens to actually reaching their hearts. I highly recommend this book if you're needing some loving coaches to cheer you on in your parenting journey. And then another says, great content and a quick read. What a breath of fresh air. This book is well written, insightful, and a quick read. Parenting is a journey of continuous improvement, and the authors do a fantastic job of dissecting common myths. It's never too late to reset and embrace a mentorship role. Highly recommend. That's fantastic.
I love that. It's kind of funny, when you don't spend your life writing to hear things about your writing. So that's kind of a nice thing to see this happening. I think it's also interesting, the three of us being together. I mean, John, we always throw out the number 20 years, but it's actually probably closer to 25 at this stage.
No. Oh, with you guys, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were there pretty close to the beginning, Tara. I mean, and by the way, Tara, thank you so much for your help with this book. You have been incredible. And it's been, I mean, honestly, John and I always argue over who's the worst with technology, and usually he wins that argument. But it's amazing, really, that if you hadn't stepped in, we'd probably just be, for me, I just have a pile of Big Chief tablet pieces of paper laying on the floor by my chair. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Tara. Thank you so much. You've been a tremendous help.
Oh, I'm so glad to help. I'm sure, I know you could have done it without me. You guys did a book together without me before, but I appreciate it, and it's been a pleasure to get to do this with you guys.
So what I thought we'd do to start with, I thought, well, let's start with you, John, and just something something out of the book that that you would say has impacted your family, maybe the most or the most interestingly.
Well, that's a great question. As I was maybe a couple of things as I was writing the book, just kind of reminiscing through my own childhood, thinking about the relationship I had with my own parents, and just small things like my mom taking me out for lunch or for ice cream, or my dad coming home after a long day of work without resting, grabbing his glove and going out and let me work on my pitching, or going out and rebounding so I could work on my jump shot. Just that time together, building that relationship with my parents or them with me. It was good as I kind of reflected on my own childhood, using that kind of as a springboard into my own thought process of how I want to be there for my own son and make sure I mirror some of the things that my parents did for me with my own child. Another concept from the book that really, I think, has guided me a lot is beginning with the end in mind. And just that process of seeing the bigger picture and realizing there may be days that I don't do everything well as a parent, but that doesn't diminish the bigger picture. You get back on track, you have a target, you have a goal that you're aiming at, and just kind of working through that on a daily basis and realigning as necessary as you parent. Some days you feel like you've done well, other days you feel like you missed the mark. But if you're just dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, sometimes it's easy to get frustrated or discouraged. When you keep that bigger picture in mind and realize I've got time to make those necessary course corrections as I navigate through this concept of being a good parent.
It's interesting, isn't it? But when you start addressing this by using the word intentional, it really impacts everything you do. And and I think the concept of begin with the end in mind, which was Stephen Covey's concept in his book. But I think when you do that, it immediately almost forces you to be more intentional and to really pay attention at what you're trying to accomplish. I love that concept, by the way, to begin with the end in mind, because there's just so much about it that really does create a balance in your family. I think one of the biggest things, it's interesting because Margaret read through the book this week, and just listening to her, I mean, she had read parts of it, but this was the first time where she was reading the whole thing, beginning to end, and kind of putting everything together at the same time. And so I think you're right. One of the processes about this is that it brings things to your memory. That that when you write stuff, it makes you remember things from your own childhood, and hopefully those are good things, right?
Absolutely.
So Tara, I was going to ask you the same question. What would you say is the most the most important, if you could just single out one concept from the book that's affected your family?
This is going to probably sound silly, but I think so, because I basically grew up with you, Dwaine.
Yeah.
From high school on, and I got to go to high school with Joy and Joe, and just seeing them and their attitude and the relationships that they had with each other, with their friends at school, and then with you and Margaret was so amazing to me. I don't know, it's just like, wow, this is something that I want. I want this in my life. I want my kids to have a relationship like this with me. And every time you and I met, I always felt like, wow, he just always has the right answer. He always knows. It's like he's just always put together. And honestly, the biggest part that impacted me the most was seeing, like, you, and you've talked to me in person, as well, but you're like, there's a sentence in the first chapter. You said, Joe survived more of my 4 mentoring moments than any of my other kids, and Joe and I have a great relationship today. And I was like, please God, because we all screw up as parents sometimes. But it's like, no, there's hope. Like you could have some poor moments, some really big screw up moments, but there's still hope. You can still have a great relationship. And that to me was the most impactful thing, is because it was like, no, everybody screws up. Nobody's perfect. You can make mistakes. Just because you made mistakes in the past doesn't mean you can't learn and grow and get better on the journey. And I love that you and John just gave so many great tools and examples of things in your parenting moments of ways we can do better. But you are both so humble in your approach to everything. And there's just so much practical stuff filled into one book. It's like, wow, how did you fit that in there? I don't even know. You need a sequel.
Well, we probably will do that. It's interesting too, because I was thinking kind of about the same question, and I really appreciate what both of you shared, because one of the things we were always trying to accomplish is a certain kind of like a culture in the home, a certain atmosphere. And a lot of that atmosphere, requires a presence of Jesus Christ. You've got to have God in your family. You've got to have, the wisdom of the Holy Spirit. And I think that's what, like with Joe, that's part of what enabled us to work through that. But it's because we had, if you're going to screw up as a parent, then don't screw up the part of a great relationship with your kid, because it's the great relationship with your kid that kind of overcomes your screw ups. and we had that. Joe and I had that. I mean, Joe, and I tell you, being able to come at this from the perspective of being a grandparent, there is nothing better than watching your kids parent and not feeling like you have to step in, that, what, they get it. They're doing a lot of these same things. They're raising their kids well. So you can go visit your grandkids and you don't feel like, oh, I've got to be the parent tonight. No, it's a lot more fun to be the grandparent, and yet do it in a way. And Margaret and I are still, seeking how to do that better. But I think that's part of the process as well, because grandparenting can be one of the most wonderful blessings of all time. I mean, it can be a great thing if, those relationships are worked through from beginning to end.
Dwaine, that's a great example of the generational impact that you talk about in the book as well, for sure. Definitely has played out in your family.
That's that generational impact. And in all honesty, you look at how much kids face now. It's a lot different now than when we raised our kids, and it's definitely different than when I was a kid. And so you want to prepare your kids for the path, not protect them for the path. Because if you don't allow that to happen, they're going to encounter some things, like both of you have high school kids, and think about the stuff that they're encountering that's different than what you guys are encountering. So it's a changing process, and that's why God's so important in this dynamic. You've got to have that presence of God, because you're dealing with change. You're dealing with the problems themselves are constantly changing. The social networking and just multiple layers of impact with that. So that's a big deal.
Yeah. Can I jump in and say something too, real quick?
Oh, I guess.
I just, John, how many times in the past, I don't know. So I think it was last year and maybe the year before that and the year before that. I don't know. But you won Coach of the Year award for like the state of Missouri, which is incredible. That's such a huge thing. Like, not only did you win it with that once, but you've had that honor several times, and it's so well deserved. But it's so interesting, like your situation with your son Marcus, right? Because you and Leah, your wife, like you have a son, and you're so excited because he's going to play basketball just like you guys, because you guys are basketball fanatics, and he like doesn't want to play basketball. And I love how you address that, and how you guys were able to have, still have a good relationship, even though he didn't necessarily like all the same things. He wasn't as passionate about basketball as you were. Could you talk about that for a minute?
Sure. After we grounded him for 3 years, we finally got past it. But no, that was a challenging time for sure. I believe I mentioned in the book that as soon as he was old enough to pick up a ball, he did. It didn't matter whether it was basketball, baseball, football. He wanted to do something sports, and we'd spend hours a day shooting or hitting or whatever it might be. And it got to the point where both my wife and myself were like, we need to get him involved in something else. We don't want him to burn out on this. And so we tried, and he kept coming back to this. And it was just something he really wanted to do. And we weren't opposed to it at all. Obviously, as sports fans and coaches and having played sports ourselves, we were excited about it. But somewhere along the line, probably around the fifth grade or so, his desire began to diminish. And so we kind of started working through that process together. I love sports for the sake of just loving sports, but there's so many life lessons to learn and to teach from the platform of sports. There's sacrifice and dedication and commitment and doing things well when you don't feel like doing things well, going to practice on days you don't feel like going to practice, not just showing up, but showing up and doing your very best. Just those life skills and life lessons that are so pertinent to know and to have in your arsenal as you get older and you get married. You may not always feel like treating your spouse right. You may not feel like getting up and going to work. But all those things that you build, those habits you build, that culture you build in your own life, pays dividends for you when you get older. And so that was part of my concern. But again, trying to keep that bigger picture in mind, that when my son's older, I want to have a great relationship with him, was kind of that driving factor for me, where I just said, okay, this isn't his passion. Why pursue it? Let's find out what he is passionate about, and we can teach some of those concepts and mentor some of those concepts, dedication and sacrifice and hard work and putting others before yourself, that you can learn through the arena of sports, but you can also learn those through other arenas as well. And so we had a few conversations along the way about, okay, if your heart's not in this, let's figure out what you are passionate about, and let's sit down and figure out how can we get from point A to point B, how can we teach these life skills through whatever that passion is. And honestly, we're still working through some of that, still trying to figure out what it is he wants to do for sure. And so be patient, be loving, be supportive, and don't try to push your passions off onto your own kid if that's not what they're passionate about, because eventually that's just going to create resentment. And that's not what you want if you're trying to keep the bigger picture in mind.
That was a great. I'm glad you asked that, Tara, because that's something that so many parents deal with. I think especially dads really struggle with that, and then dads want their kids to be in whatever they were in, and sometimes that works, and it's great. I mean, it's great to have that in common, but sometimes that doesn't work out, and then that's when you've got to really be attentive as a parent and really be intentional in pursuing your kids, and like you said, John, finding out what they're interested in and working with that. I have another question I wanted to ask both of you because I think it's really interesting the timing that both of you just had your teenagers get back from short-term mission trips. So, um, how did that? Have you seen an impact from that? I love the aspect of kids doing short-term mission trips. I think that really, the more they can see, what the rest of the world looks like and what kind of struggles kids go through in other countries. And I mean, it definitely impacted our kids. What are you seeing so far in that, John? I know he hasn't been home long, but have you had any chance to chat with him about that at all?
Just a little bit, not a whole lot. He got back at midnight. The night they returned, a little before that. So we talked a little bit that evening, but not for a whole lot. And then he got sick for a few days after that, still trying to battle that sickness right now. So we really have not had a good chance to sit down and discuss it. But, you can see maybe a little deeper appreciation for what he has here in America. He went to Panama, saw a lot of poverty, a lot of people in need. And frankly, that's good for kids to see and help them appreciate what they have. But I think it gave him a heart for people that don't have as much as what he might have. And, we're just a basic middle class family. We're not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a school teacher, so I think people understand that. But, when you compare it to some other places around the world, we're very comfortable. And it's easy to fall into that rut of, I have what I need and be satisfied with that. Or sometimes not always being content with that. Sometimes wanting more, but whenever you see people that are actually in need, I think it kind of reshapes your perspective just a little bit, makes you appreciate a little more what you have. But I do look forward to having that conversation with him when he gets feeling better.
Have you guys had time to chat about it with Sierra?
We have. It's interesting because we just got back from that mission trip to Mexico in December.
Wow.
And so, I feel like we had a lot of like what you're talking about, John, from, gosh, I just want to call you Coach B so bad. We had a lot of that from the Mexico mission trip. But this time when Sierra came back from this trip, she noticed that Skylar and I have been pretty exhausted. We've been putting in like 17 to 19 hour days getting the building done and working dog boarding without help. And so she just jumped right in, didn't complain, and that this is not always normal. She didn't complain. She just jumped in and helped. And in fact, she actually told us, she was like, actually, I've got this last shift, guys. Like, you guys just go in and relax, and then let's watch a TV show together when I get done. We were like, whatever you want. Praise God for you. And she said, it just feels so weird being back, like not having something to do all the time, because we were always going and going and going. And so she was like, I just feel like I should be doing something. And I said, well, sometimes it's good to rest, but also it's good to have time where you're working on something productive. And so one of the things she got to do when she was on her trip was plant potatoes and onions. And so she came in and found some of our potatoes were ready for planting, however you do it. And she took our son Gabriel out, and they planted potatoes together, and they made roast. She said, did you know one cut of a potato will make 6 bags of potatoes? I'm like, that's pretty cool. And she goes, I love doing that. So that was neat. And then she also said, so I'm like, this is great. She's learned some like adult responsible things while she was on the trip. And then one thing they did was they put them in like a fake refugee type situation, if that makes sense, to where, and they woke them up at like 5:00 in the morning or 3:00 in the morning, something like that, and pretended like they're like, oh, they found us. We got to go. We got to get out. And these people would shoot fireworks at them, and it sounded like guns going off. And so they were trying to escape. And they'd run across these people and stuff would get stolen from them or whatever. And so then they had to like think as a group and not leave, not leave people behind. Are you going to leave people behind? Or are you not? How are you going to get through this way and stuff like that? And so she felt like she got to have somewhat of an experience to where she could better understand some things that people go through that are in those type of situations. And she was like, man, she sponsors a girl in Haiti that's the same age as her, and they have a lot of writing and issues going on where it's not even safe for them to go check the mail. And she said, I feel like I am closer to the girl I'm sponsoring somehow, just because I can see that her situation is so much different than what I'm going through now. And it made her want to be in communication with her more, like as much as possible, so that she knows that somebody's praying for her and loves her.
We talk so much in the book about heart, and that heart part is such a significant thing. And so when you see that, and I think part of the evidence of that is when a 14-year-old wants to go out and plant potatoes with a 4-year-old. I mean, that is such a wonderful thing to see. Because and I know I keep going back to this, but without Christ in your home, that's really a difficult attitude to attain. And so I'm just curious. So do you think you're seeing some kind of changes, some awareness in Tara's heart of maybe that that Christ-like living that that we try to achieve as Christian parents?
Yeah, I feel like she's definitely become more selfless and been more focused on on others than herself, which is scriptural. And I think that, like, I don't know, I can see a difference in her attitude and behavior for sure. I guess we haven't talked a whole lot about the spiritual impact it's had on her, which is really funny that, like, to think about now that I haven't even asked her, but I'm going to ask her about that. But I feel like I've just seen more of the fruit of it,
I think it takes some processing when you get back from a trip for the spiritual part.
Yeah.
It's difficult to process everything through that. But no less important, right?
Absolutely.
I was just thinking, one of the things that we ended up writing a little bit about in the book that even as we were writing it, I didn't see coming, but we talked a little bit about parents having disagreements in front of their kids, and I don't know. I'm sure both of you, when you were kids, your parents had disagreements, had arguments, had fights, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so when we started addressing that in the book, and it was like, I felt, and I still do, I feel strongly that kids need to see their parents have disagreements, but that parents need to learn to do it well.
Yeah, respectfully.
That there's a line you cross that you should not cross.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I felt strongly about that is, so then your kids go and they get married, and then they have a fight with their spouse, but they don't remember that you had fights with your spouse, so they think there's something wrong with them, and it impacts their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important to have some disagreements that your kids witness. And I know Margaret and I certainly did that. It's kind of, I mean, do you see that play out differently Because another thing that we've been talking about on Thursday nights, Tara, is sometimes you need to make changes. Sometimes your parenting needs to change from what you didn't like when you were growing up or what was dysfunctional when you were growing up, and you need to change that.
Mhm.
And I think this is an area that can be significantly changed. Do you see you and Skylar trying to do that differently than your parents or Skylar's parents?
I'm not for sure how Skylar's parents argued. My parents would argue in front of us, but sometimes behind closed doors. I don't know if I noticed a difference. I feel like when Skylar and I argue, he's definitely a lot more respectful of me than I should be probably a little more respectful of him. But I do, like, if I need to apologize to him, I will always do it in front of the kids so that they can see, like, yes, mom and dad had an argument. If mom was in the wrong, mom came and apologized, and Skylar does the same thing. But we do try to talk about things in a respectful way to each other when we are disagreeing, where the kids can hear us for sure. We're just not always perfect at it. And in arguments, honestly, we've probably argued like 5 or 6 times the whole time we've ever been married. So we just don't do that very often.
How about you, John? Has that changed kind of generationally, or do you feel like you and Leah pretty much handle that the same way as your parents did?
Well, in all honesty, maybe it's just poor memory on my part, but I don't remember my parents arguing all that often. I remember a few things being said to each other here and there, nothing harsh, just a minor disagreement. And I don't really remember a resolution process they went through, but they always seemed to get along well. In my own marriage, as long as I do what I'm told, we have no problems here either. No, in all seriousness, my wife and I really don't argue that much either. We get along really well. So I don't really have a whole lot of information to share on that. I hope that's a good thing, but
well, it is a good thing. I know. I was thinking, as you get older, your for Margaret and I, our arguments have changed. When you've got a house full of kids and you're arguing like whose turn it is to take out the trash, or who did some child task the last. But the other day we got an argument and we were arguing about in order to be an apostle, did you have to witness the resurrection? And and I thought, wow, that's changed, And so there was that aspect of and I say argue, it's not like we're, having a knockdown drag out. It's just having a reasonable discussion, right?
Yes.
So but I do think that especially when you come from a family that's been a kind of a dysfunctional part of your life, and then you're trying to make a change in the culture of your home, that's really a big deal. And then, but if you haven't had that modeled, if that's not the way the atmosphere was in your home, then I think it's really hard to make that change.
well, part of it, Dwaine, goes back to keeping the bigger picture in mind. What is it you want to model for your kids that they can pattern their own lives after? So whenever they become adults, they have this line of observations they can fall back on and say, here's what my parents did well for me, and use that to kind of gauge in their own marriage and give them direction in their own marriage. But that whole concept, to me, of keeping the bigger picture in mind is just so powerful. And part of that process we talked about is silent mentoring. That your kids are generally watching you, whether you realize it or not. I had that same conversation with my students at school, with my high school students. When you guys are walking through the hallway, the middle school students, the elementary students, they're watching you, whether you realize it or not, whether you acknowledge that or not. you're being observed. And having that consistency of character and living with integrity and being the same person, whether you're by yourself or with other people, is critically important, especially as parents. I think it was Dave Ramsey, paraphrasing him, said something to the effect of, live your life in such a way that you can truthfully tell your kids what you did. In other words, when they ask you, were you involved in drugs or whatever it might be, did you live your life in such a way that you can be honest with your answers? And if you didn't, still be honest with your answers and use that as a teaching point. But that consistency of character, keeping the bigger picture in mind, is so important. I just think that's a really powerful concept in our book.
That's so good. So Coach B is also Sierra's Bible teacher in high school, and one thing that just impressed me so much was it's something, it seems like it's been going the whole year, where you had them like create a game, and they have to there's like a yay side and a nay side for, like, why do you believe what you believe? And so you have the naysayers, that are questioning your faith and your beliefs, and then you have to be able to back up what you believe. And I just feel like that is one of the, like, is the most important thing that she even comes out of school with, comes out of high school with, is having that foundation. And it impresses me so much. And she would come home and talk about it almost every week. And I was like, this is amazing, because and even during, like, I think it was like first semester, maybe, she went somewhere, and a family member started questioning her faith, and they are atheists, or I don't know if they're agnostic or atheists. I can't remember. But anyway, they don't believe in God, and they were, like, really legitimately trying to get her to change her beliefs and to not believe in God and questioning her faith. And I'm like, oh my word, why is this adult questioning my child in her faith like this? This is ridiculous. And she came home, like, really questioning what she believed. And then she goes back to school, and she gets right back in the trenches. And she's like, because, she told me a few weeks ago, she said, Mom, there was a time that, during that time, I really was questioning my faith, and I didn't know how to defend my faith. And she said, but now that I've been in Mr. B's class, I feel like, she goes, I know why I believe what I believe. And I feel confident that I could stand up and, like, and tell somebody if they question me. And so now, next time I go and I'm around that family member, if they bring up something, like, I know what I'm going to say. And that just breaks my heart so much. And that's why I'm telling you guys, like, if there is a book on parenting that you want to read from two authors that have lived it, that are, like, amazing examples, it's these guys right here. And that's why I'm so honored to, like, just be part of this process. So you guys can go make sure you grab a copy. It's called Becoming Intentional at Parenting by Dwaine and John Blankenship. The link is in the comments below. You got to go get it. It's totally free today and tomorrow. So tomorrow is Friday, the 21st. So of March 2025. So just so you know, if you go back and read this later or watch this later, but either way, you can go to the link. Even after it's not free, you can go and download the Kindle version or get the paperback book. And we're working on the audio book too, so that you can have access to that. But it is totally worth the read. So thank you guys so much for joining. Dwaine, is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we hop off?
Well, yeah, Tara, I was just going to mention once again the need for people to kind of partner with you and Skylar on this trip to Africa, that we still need to raise some money for Bibles. And I'm excited about that trip. I just, for you guys to go there and teach on family, and let them see that your family's doing well. It's such a blessing. So, if you don't have a place for all your dollars to go this month, then a great place would be to go to Sozo Ministries or Sozo Mountain Ministries and donate to help provide Bibles for that trip.
Oh, We're so excited. It's going to be so good. We're going August 4th through the 14th, I think. Sierra's kind of bummed because she's going to miss the first couple of days of school, and I said it's going to be totally worth it. So be prepared, Coach. She's going to miss a couple of days, but it's going to be so good, and they are just so thrilled that we're going to bring Bibles to them. And the way that we're going to do that is through people like you guys who are watching and so into the ministry. You guys have such a pivotal role to play to help spread the gospel. And oh my goodness, I've never seen people rejoice so much over getting Bibles. They're so excited that we're going to get to bring Bibles. So we're $1,400 short of what we need so far. So if you want to donate to that, just go to sozomountainministries.com. It's up on the screen. And you can donate toward that. It is tax deductible, so you can write it off on your taxes. That's always a plus.
Tara, just what I'm seeing here, I love this, but it kind of sums things up. If you look at all the things that we're talking about in terms of parenting, then we kind of address so many things. Just like having your daughter and having the trust that she's learning the Bible, that she's learning that information in a strong enough way, and so she's got that support. In all honesty, then she sees John on here with you, and that kind of gives that validity as well. And then having that in the home, and then both of you talking about how little you argue in your home, and that's the presence of God. It takes the Holy Spirit to have that kind of atmosphere in your home. So all of these things, and being effective spouses, and that silent mentoring that you mentioned, John, and almost all of that is kind of begin with the end in mind, intentionality, and it takes that, but oh my goodness, is it ever worth it? And like I said earlier, to see all that playing out with our grandkids, and know that that's being generationally multiplied is just. Wow, you just cannot put a value on that. It's so high.
Tara, I'm gonna ask you instead of Dwaine, because Dwaine will say no. But can I say one more thing here?
Yep.
Of course.
See how quickly I said yes.
That was impressive. Did you misunderstand my question?
I haven't been feeling well. And,
Apparently so. Tara, I just wanted to say, having coached you and now having Sierra in class, man, that makes me feel old. But on a serious note, seeing what you have done with your family and this ministry and going on these mission trips, I just want to tell you, I'm really, really proud of you and what you've accomplished, what you're currently doing. I just think that's great and really, really powerful for your kids as well. So great job.
Oh, praise God. Thank you. Don't make me cry. That's so sweet. Thank you. I just appreciate you guys so much. Really, the Lord's used both of you to shape my life in so many ways in high school, and it's really carried on in my life in so many things that I do. And Sierra knows that, and she's grateful for you guys. And and so it's such an honor and blessing that she gets to go and be part of your class, and that you're helping her in that way. I love how the Lord's using you. Dwaine, you know how I feel about you. The Lord's using you in so many powerful ways. So thank you guys so much for pouring into students, for pouring into adults, and parents, and helping them, coming alongside them as warriors and championing with them. It's amazing. No one has written a parenting book. I can guarantee you, no one has written a parenting book like what you're going to read when you go get this book. It's amazing. These guys are the greatest coaches there ever was. Leah helped coach when I was in high school too, John's wife, and she was wonderful. You guys are just like a powerful team. This is a great duo you guys have right there too. It's awesome. So thank you again. We appreciate you, and we appreciate all of you for joining and watching. Go get the book. You want the book. I promise. We love you, but more importantly, Jesus loves you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Sure.